Today I'd like to talk about savlanut, a Hebrew term that refers to patience. Last night, Val and I went for a walk, and as we were walking, I noticed at one point that Val got very close to me and grabbed my arm, which she doesn't typically do when we're on a walk. And I looked at what she was looking at, and across from us, there was a large coyote that was staring at us. And it was walking towards us, and we were walking towards it on two sides of the street. And the first thing I said to Val was, "Don't run." Because in the past, when we'd seen large dogs, she would have a tendency to run off and wouldn't necessarily help the situation. But she knew in this situation, she was not about to run. And the best thing for us to do was just to maintain our course. I kept an eye on the coyote, which was rather large, and it kept its eyes on us, and we continued to walk in one direction, and it continued to walk in the other direction, and eventually it came behind us and crossed the street and went down an alleyway. And as the distance grew between us, my heart was more and more relieved. I did know in coming around the other side of the neighborhood that we might have another encounter with the coyote if we crossed paths again. And Val had found some rather large sticks that we can carry and make ourselves bigger and make noise and all of that. And whatever discussion we were having before we encountered the coyote quickly stopped, and then we just discussed what we would do if we saw this coyote again. So I tell this story to say, among other things, well, I'm glad the children weren't with us, because they have a tendency to run ahead of where we are and maybe be by themselves on the walk, and maybe that wouldn't have been a good thing. But the thing that I'd like to bring attention to is this idea of patience. And I learned more about coyote encounters when I got home and was able to look up some articles concerning it. And one of the things they say, surprisingly, is that you do want to maintain eye contact with them. Of course, you don't want to run, because that will trigger their instinct to chase after you. And we had to exercise a certain degree of patience to not flee from the situation and to just remain calm. Additionally, the coyote had to show some patience in not knowing what our intentions were upon seeing us. And it was reading our signals as well. And thankfully, we were able to communicate successfully with one another and both go our separate ways. But I say all this to talk about the importance of this Hebrew word, savlanut, meaning patience. It comes from the Hebrew root sevel, which is samek vet lamed, samek vet lamed, sevel, to suffer. So this idea of suffering for a time is tied to patience, that I don't like what we're encountering now, but we're going to remain. And then this same root is also connected to the word sovlanut, which is tolerance. And oftentimes in our lives, we have to tolerate other opinions that we don't like. And this is part of how the Lord shapes us. One Rabbi, Rabbi Moir, said that everyone has a distinct voice, a distinct appearance, and distinct opinions. And such is it in community. So just bringing this all together and relating it to our current time, this quarantine is a time that especially tests our patience. Personally, I think I've had my fill of it, but I don't get to choose when it ends. So perhaps it is one way that God is working on my patience, and one way that God is working on our patience as a community. And may God grant us the savlanut, the patience, to endure and run the race well until this season ends. Shabbat Shalom.